Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you by the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. You can use promo code Hockey Season, capital H, capital S, all one word, Hockey Season. That will get you $5 off your order at ZephyrEpic.com. That is ZEPHYR Epic. Check them out on all platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, whatever it is. They've got you covered for all of your trading card needs, so be sure to go check them out. Retail location in Surrey as well, along with free shipping on any order over $50 Canada-wide. My name is David Quadrelli. I'm joined as always by the man who built the place, Chris Faber. Our technical producer, as always, is Alex Szilard. This is the Canucks Conversation podcast, and Chris, we have a game to talk about. We said we'd talk about it after. Do you have anything off the top? Because I know you like to sometimes talk about other stuff off the top here.
Sometimes I like to do that. Yeah, I do have something. So it's St. Patrick's Day today. I see you're wearing your green. Good for you. My green looks a little gray on camera here. This doesn't look great, but I got the beads on as well, showing it off. Because St. Patrick's Day, typically one of my favorite holidays. Or it's not even a holiday. Favorite party day, I guess, of the year. One of my best friends' birthday is always on the same weekend as St. Patrick's Day. So growing up, he always had, back when we were in high school, he always had the party at his house. Parents, for some reason, left their house all the time during St. Patrick's Day. And we always had the best parties there back in the day. I'm saying it. So I've always had good memories on St. Patrick's Day. Will not be having them this year, unfortunately, though, because I'll be still stuck in the house. But that's okay. Do you have any fun St. Patrick's Day memories? What's St. Patrick's Day mean to you, Quads?
I don't know. I wear green. I'm wearing green because we went out. We went to the Hard Bean brunch place in Port Moody, and I've told you about this place before. It is fantastic, though. We managed to get out there. It was a good time. They have a little St. Patrick's Day menu. I had a flight, Bailey's St. Patrick's Day coffee flight, and it was really good. There was like red velvet, salted caramel, something else. Can't remember the other two, but it was good. It was really good. It was a good time, and that's why I'm wearing green.
How many you're talking this morning? How many of these Bailey's coffees did you have this morning?
They're little coffees, yeah, right? It's like a flight. It's not full coffees. I didn't drink 4 full coffees, and I also split them with my girlfriend. So
the way you were stumbling through the intro there, I was wondering how much Bailey's you've had this morning. A little bit too much in the morning there. Sounds like. Well,
look, man,
off to a hot start for Quads over here.
I'm tired, okay? I'm just tired. Like, I'm tired. Last night was a busy night with the dog. I'm not going to get into it. I'm a little tired today. That's all I'm going to say. And you know what? I got to edit Stanchies, right? Like, I got to do Stanchies, and the dog doesn't realize that I'm on Stanchies, is that I have to stay up late and all that sort of stuff. So dog doesn't get it, which is fine. But yeah, that's why I'm a little bit tired today. But anyways, enough about that. Let's get to it here. The first heading. Team Tank survives. The Canucks losing last night to the Arizona Coyotes. What did you think about that game, Chris?
First of all, Alex, get the video up and hit it. Let's go. Team Tank's back alive. Look at that. Oh, full power, full steam ahead. Big one for the Coyotes. Look at the Tank rolling on through. It's back, baby. Yeah, Canucks were buried in the second period there. That's what it felt like. Tell you what, I was thinking going into the game, seeing the early goal from Kuzmenko, and I talked about it on yesterday's show a little bit. It felt nice to just watch the Canucks play well, play good hockey and win some games here and there. But it felt even better to watch them lose to the Coyotes yesterday and actually have something mean to the Tank, right? Like, it really did, because they moved up a spot. The Blues, I believe, passed them. So now you got the Canucks kind of sneaking back into that top 5 area. That's where you want to be, man. You want to be in that top 5, and if the Canucks can finish up there, not even if they win the lottery, if they can just finish with the 5th worst record in the league, you're getting a star. You're absolutely getting a star. It'll be interesting to see how things play out. But though I was catching a little bit of the buzz on the Canucks winning and enjoying watching it, seeing 0 points after the game, it made me feel a little bit better, I think. I think Team Tank's still alive. Team Tank's still well. I'm still on board.
That's fair. I think my playoff dream that I threw out there yesterday, I think the playoff dream might be over, because now if they win out, it's 93 points. I think after every loss, Chris, I'm going to come out and say, Now it's 91 points if they win every game. Now it's 89 if they win every game, and so on and so forth. 93 points if the Canucks win every game from here on out. So probably not enough to make the playoffs. 95 probably wouldn't have been either. But yes, of course, you just mentioned it. The St. Louis Blues passing the Canucks in the Tankathon standings, tied at 63 points with the Coyotes. But the Coyotes do have 2 games in hand. This is a developing story, folks, and it's one we'll be keeping an eye on for the remainder of the season. Is the tank for sure.
Absolutely. All right, you can kill that thing, Alex. I know Alex loves nothing more than playing this tank video, which I appreciate that about him. All right. Yeah, Canucks, like I said, I feel like they played pretty good in the first period. I think aside from the power plays, right, like going 0 for 3 in the first period there on the power plays, that's going to bite you in the ass no matter what, especially in a game where, adding a couple goals, getting up 2-0 would have been massive for the Canucks in that game yesterday. But it was, like I don't, to me, it's the same thing. It's like I saw somebody in the chat there. I'm away from the chat here now, but it said it was a perfect game last night, right? You get some points for Pettersson. You get no points towards the standings, but I think that's what a lot of people are looking onto right now. It's like get some goals from Kuzmenko, have Pettersson continue on that race to 100 points. That's going to be an exciting positive moving forward, but let it roll and kind of take some losses. And as you can see from the game flow chart here from Natural Stat Trick on YouTube, that second period was a very good period for Team Tank. You saw the Coyotes absolutely take over that game. They ended up having something like 16, let me get this right, 16 scoring chances in the second period at 5-on-5, compared to the Canucks having just 4. Like they really, that second period was one where I've had this happen a lot lately watching Canucks games, especially when I'm at home. Like, because when I'm at the game, you can, it's pretty hard to like just kind of let the periods pass by. But that game last night, like that second period, that flew by. That felt like I blinked a couple times and we were off into the intermission. Like we're going to see a few of those periods here and there. And I think Rick Tocchet wasn't very happy with the team's play throughout the game. Felt like it was a little bit of a sleepy performance from them. And I think you really saw that in the second period. But overall, like the Canucks in a tight game like that, the power play going 0 for 5 is the reason they lost. And that's too bad because I think the power play is something I want to spend a little bit of time on here. I'm curious what's kind of worrying you about the power play. They've been slowing up quite a bit. Like we can remember them being a top 10 power play in the league for a long time. Since Rick Tocchett's come in, it has not been a top 10 power play in the NHL. I think they've been struggling a little bit. I'm just not sure where it's coming from. Like I think they're doing a little bit of different movement with certain players, right? Like it looks like Kuzmenko's now kind of the guy in the left half wall. Looks like they're trying to get Boeser going in the bumper. It just feels like not a lot of that is working well. Like Kuzmenko, I say this a lot, and if you watch pregame, if you go to the pregame at Rogers Arena and you watch Kuzmenko, before he gives a stick away to a fan, because he does that every freaking game, he stands in front of the net, like with Quinn Hughes not that far away from him, and he tips pucks, and I swear to God, he never misses. He tips every single puck that's like shot from Quinn Hughes, and it's remarkable to watch. Watch it next time you're at pregame. Just watch Kuzmenko do this. It's incredible to watch. I'm wondering why he's been taken out of that spot. Like they want to get him going, I guess, with the shot a little bit on the left side, but really he's at his best with those tap-ins, and not necessarily just his skill alone. It's his intelligence of understanding where Pettersson likes to pass the puck and likes to make some of those plays. So I think that's the first thing you got to do is you got to get Kuzmenko back to the net front and maybe get JT Miller back down on that forehand side on the left half wall, because I don't think that's working right now with the power play.
Corey Anderson in the YouTube live chat brings up a good point here. He says they need to move around, stop standing around playing pass with Quinn Hughes. Kind of what it looks like. Like when you're watching it, that is kind of what it looks like this power play is doing a lot of. Now, look, is there any part of you, Chris, because you just mentioned it, Kuzmenko on the half wall, they're trying to activate his shot a little bit more. Is there any part of you that's looking at this and saying, you know what? They know one thing works, but it's not about wins at this time of year, and this team is trying to experiment with something new, something that they think could work out long term. Like maybe they just want to get Boeser back on that first power play unit. I don't know what it could be. I think we know what works, and we know that what they're doing right now maybe doesn't work, but maybe they want what they're doing now to work long term. I hate giving these takes of maybe they're just galaxy braining it. Maybe they're tricking everybody and they're going to do the opposite of what we think they're doing. I hate saying that, but it doesn't make much sense to change up the power play, see it do worse, and then not really go back to what works, right?
Yeah, I think I could bite on that if Quinn Hughes didn't play 29 minutes last night. Right. Like if this was actually the training camp stuff that they've talked about and you were starting to see some of the players really be spread out and some other names hopping into power play one, I could buy it, right? Like, but it's, to me, that's not going down the same path of this whole training camp situation, because that's not the way this team's being deployed right now. So I understand where you're coming from, but I also think that maybe a lot of those other things to try out are more things at 5-on-5 and kind of sticking to the structure. It feels weird to me to just like really try to like the same 5 bodies, but in a different position, when it felt like the power play was working. And the thing that was working really the best was Kuzmenko as a net front, tipping everything in. And it's kind of that's a weird one to go away from in my eyes. I've got an idea to get to a little bit later in the show, but I did want to bring up Brock Boeser real quick too, because like the dude cannot buy a goal. I really like the way he's playing. Like I really like the way that he's playing. I like the way that he's actually attacking a net and getting shots off, whether it be from the bumper or just a guy who's putting his head down and going to the crease to create offense. I think he's doing a lot of that lately. He just can't buy a goal right now, man. Like the amount of posts he's hit lately, the amount of times he's missed the net, I guess you just got to bear down a little bit on that shot. And I think once he gets a couple here, I tweeted it last night, like nobody on this team's like more deserving of like a 2-goal game where they get a couple bounces than Brock Boeser, right? Like he deserves a bounce, because I really think he's doing good process in the offensive zone and the defensive zone. I just think he's got to get rewarded here at some point, kind of in a similar way. Like I mentioned Bavilla yesterday, he picked up a pair of assists. I think he's been playing really good too. Nice to see him get rewarded with a pair of apples last night. And I think with Boeser, I think the goals have to come. Like, I really think they have to come. I know that he only had the 5 shots over that 5-game win streak. That's not great. Those numbers have to go up. But I really think the process that he's doing is well. Like, I do think the process behind the way that Brock Boeser is playing is going to be something that he gets rewarded for pretty soon here.
Is good. I think you meant there. We're both tired, man. You're recovering from your sickness.
Yeah. My brain's not great.
Karen N in the chat jumped in and said maybe try a guy like Pods as the net front. I really like it. Like, look, how long have we been saying let this guy kill penalties, let him get some power play opportunity? This is the time to do it. And Dominic in the chat as well, when I was giving my Galaxy Brain take, said Quads, put your tinfoil hat on. Our staff doesn't think that far. Yeah, probably not, especially in the middle of a 5-game win streak. So there's probably no chance that what I threw out there is actually what's going on. But I'd like to see that go on. Like, I'd like to see them think about, long term, like, what can we do next year with this power play? What's it going to look like next year? And again, Vasily Podkolzin's probably going to be a guy that's a fixture on that power play. One thing from this game, Chris, and if you want to, you can continue the conversation if you want to, but one thing from this game that I really want to talk about is it probably means Aiden McDonough's getting in, right? Like, Aiden McDonough's got to get in tomorrow night against Los Angeles, right? Like, he has to at this point.
Maybe, but think about it. Back-to-backs I got Sunday at 5:00. Let me tie this into the power play then. Right. So listen, Aiden McDonough, obviously a good shooter, good one-timer, great release. It's power plays where he's going to score. What do you think about Aiden McDonough just, going back to the power play that they had before with Aiden McDonough and Bo Horvat's spot? Right? Like, give him all the opportunity in the world to succeed. Like, put JT Miller back on the left half wall, put Kuzmenko in the net front, put Pettersson on his right in the Petter zone, get Quinn Hughes on the point, and then have McDonough in that slot so you can have that lefty to lefty, left half wall to bumper pass that's there that Bo Horvat obviously ripped up. Like, put McDonough there for practice, feed him 100 passes from JT Miller, and then just let it go into the game. Like, put this kid in the best position to succeed, because winning and losing doesn't matter. And that's the type of thing that you mentioned earlier. Like, maybe they're trying things on the power play. If they do something like that, then I'm like, okay, they're trying things on the power play. He's not going to be a guy who's going to start next season on the first power play unit, unless he goes on the first power play unit this season and is just incredible there. Like, let him use his best strength to the highest ability. That's on the first power play unit in that bumper position. Like, let him do it. See, like, why not? The power play just went 0 for 5 against the Coyotes, the freaking Coyotes. Like, I think you got to try that. I think that is the best spot to give McDonough the best chance for, having success in this NHL season, where I think it's going to be very difficult for him to have success. It's a big jump coming from the NCAA to the NHL. He's going to try and make it, but if you put him in that spot, like, wow, give him, get his best skill, which I think is an NHL shot, NHL release, NHL one-timer, everything. Put him with NHL players on a power play and see if you can kind of see some success there. I'd love to see the big fella rip some shots from the bumper. Like, he's a big body, man. He's going to be hard to move out of the bumper position by forwards who are trying to cover the half wall and the point. Like, you can find that mushy middle there in the bumper. And when you're 6'2", 6'3", like McDonough's a big dude. He can set up in that spot, and you know that he has the release. He normally does it from the right half wall. I think he can make that adjustment to get that shot off from the slot too, because that's a spot where he scored a lot at 5-on-5.
Like I said when we were talking about McDonough earlier, he can rip the puck from anywhere, and he can do it with very little time. He can do it from basically any angle. I love that idea. Like, I absolutely love that idea. I'd love to see them do it. You're not going to get any pushback or any sort of counter argument there. I would love to see this team do that. Don't think they will, to be quite honest with you, but it would be nice to see for sure. Okay, busy weekend ahead here. Back to back, I want to talk goaltending, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. How do you split these starts? Like what are you doing this weekend with the goaltending?
Yeah, probably Demko Saturday, right? I think you go back to Demko on Saturday. It's just Hockey Night in Canada, Saturday night games. You normally give those to your starter, right? I look at it as a pretty simple equation here. It's going to be Demko on Saturday, and I don't care if he gets a shutout and makes 95 saves or if he gets a shutout and makes one save. Are you going to get mad at me because I said shutout the day before? Because I know you don't like that word. I'm not apparently allowed to use it ever. I think that's pretty simple equation here. You put Demko in on Saturday, you play Delia on Sunday there, but it'll be curious to see what happens with Spencer Martin here too, right? Like he had a really good game in the AHL his last game. He's had some up and down games. I know it's been a struggle for him mentally down there, but I think he's working on some things. I'm curious when we get a chance to see Martin, because it's not Seelov's getting the starts down there anymore full time, right? It's like Spencer Martin is I don't want to say a priority, but he's been getting a lot of starts down there in the AHL. And with back-to-backs this weekend for the AHL team, it's not like Seelovs is going to pick up a couple more. So the story to follow on Spencer Martin, I don't think it's done for this season either.
Yeah, no, they're trying to rebuild his game. I've said it before. I'll say it again. They're going to be giving Spencer Martin some starts. I don't think it's going to be the bulk of starts. I think they're going to continue kind of splitting starts down there. Obviously, Seelovs before was just running away with it because the Abbotsford Canucks basically didn't have a backup goaltender. So I ask you this. You brought him up. Seelovs Canucks play tonight, Friday, March 17th, at home against the Ontario Reign, the LA Kings farm team, oddly enough. Saturday night, same thing. They play the Ontario Reign. Sunday, Canucks are in Anaheim. Is that enough time to call up Artur Seelovs, get him on a plane to Anaheim, and let him start that game against Anaheim at 5 o'clock?
I like that. Already likes it, but no, that's not a good move. You play him at home when you have home games in Abbotsford and you have Vancouver at home, and you make it happen like that. You don't make the travel starts for him. I don't think you do that. So I think Seelovs. I don't even know if Seelovs will start tonight in Abbotsford, to be honest. Like I said, it's been a thing where Spencer Martin, when they're both there, he's started over Seelovs. So it's not like a for sure thing moving forward here that's going to be Seelovs. I'm curious if that's something about this sort of being a conditioning stint type of thing for Spencer Martin, where they need him to play a certain amount of games. But in my eyes, yeah, I'd be shocked to see the Seelovs train roll down to Anaheim on Sunday there. I think he's going to play. I have a feeling he'll start Saturday.
Let me have this. Just let me have this. Yes, I know what you mean. I know what you're saying. I think you're right. It's going to be Delia. I also like the idea of putting Delia in against Anaheim, because you really don't want that win. Like, you really, if there's a tank loss, that's the one. You want to lose that game against Anaheim. I think they still have like 3 games left against Anaheim, or 2. I'm not exactly sure. So you definitely want to lose that game against Anaheim for the tank efforts, of course. Okay. Anything else that you want to get to? What a quick episode this has been so far.
No. I just want to get to the reverse standings here. Now the Canucks sitting at the 8th worst record in the. That's a really hard one to say. 8th worst. Say that. That's one of those things you do in broadcasting. You say it 5 times before you go on air or something. Anyways, Canucks. They're 8th worst team in the NHL. 6.0% odds to win the lottery right now. This is where you want to sit. You don't want to drop further down than 8th. If you can get to 5, then you're laughing. I like that. But the draft lottery looking good today. Let's get to the busy weekend like we talked about it. Quinn Hughes, I mentioned, played 28:56 of ice time in this last game just yesterday. They're heading into the weekend, back-to-backs. Very curious to watch the ice time there, right? Like this is going to be interesting. It's 2 games basically played within 24 hours, right? Like you'll be finished that Sunday game within 24 hours pretty much of just starting the game before. On Saturday night. I'm very curious to see how the ice time is used with Quinn Hughes here, because I think this is the real first, I don't even know what to call it, like hurdle, almost want to call it like the Amazing Race, is a little pit stop here. Like, how many minutes are we going to see from Quinn Hughes in this back-to-back situation? Like, I think we've made a pretty big deal of it. I think a lot of people podcasting or doing radio or TV have made a pretty big deal about the ice time. And I think it's fair, right? Like, it's fair. He played 28:56 last night. So it's not like we're just bringing up this point to bring up this point. Dude played like nearly 29 minutes. And I will give it this, 8 minutes and 9 seconds of that was on the power play. So that's a lot of time on the power play as well. Those are normally pretty easier minutes to play for sure. But with the back-to-backs on the weekend, I think I'm very curious to see what the main topic that we have on Monday is. And it might be, is the ice time still a problem after watching back-to-backs where Quinn Hughes, potentially could be like over 27, 28 minutes in both these games. And that would be a mistake, I think, right? Like, I'm not an NHL coach, but I feel like that's a mistake. I feel like I'm pretty confident saying that with the back-to-backs and the way that this season's been going, how everything's kind of been trending. I think the ice time is something we might end up having as like the first thing to talk about on Monday, even though it's a topic that's been mentioned a lot over the past few weeks here.
Oh, absolutely. And you think about it from this perspective, Chris, like, yeah, you're not an NHL coach, but we've seen guys go down with injuries down the stretch run, especially when they're playing as much as Quinn Hughes is right now. And that's what this team absolutely doesn't need. And I know goaltending is a totally different position. But look, we saw Thatcher Demko go down late in the season last year, and he had a late start to his off season, and we saw what that does. I don't want to see a world where Quinn Hughes has a later start or anything potentially jeopardizes his start next year. So again, you have to see the ice time come down this weekend. You just have to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I did want to do some AHL stuff real quick here before we get out, because it's a busy weekend. You mentioned it for both teams, right? You got back-to-backs for Abbotsford tonight and tomorrow, Vancouver back-to-backs on Saturday and Sunday. Wanted to bring up some of the stats here. I do want to quickly kind of talk about Linus Karlsson, right? Where I think I'm at the point right now where I'd be very surprised to not see him get some NHL games, but I'm kind of curious how they're going to feed him into some ice time, right? Like, it's not like they have so many wingers that it's going to even be strange to see Aiden McDonough get into the lineup. But I think Linus Karlsson's got to get in here pretty soon. He's got 43 points now in 60 games, 19 goals for him. He's now leading the team, finally past Lane Peterson, who was, ripping it up in the 22 games that he played. But Karlsson's up to now 145 shots on net through 60 games. So it's been really good to see him produce at that rate. I also wanted to bring up this stat from Danila Klimovich. Say what you want about the plus minus. He's a plus 10. Danila Klimovich is this year. Like, Klimovich has been very much doing a good job of actually being committed to the process lately. It feels like I don't think he's getting a lot of the offensive production that you would hope for. I think a lot of that is also because Arshdeep Bains is not on his line anymore. Like, Klimovich himself has been moved down the lineup a little bit to play in more of a role like that is a typical fourth line, which isn't really where you want him. But like, he's skating with Vinny Arsenault and Chase Waters on a fourth line. You're not going to see as much offense as kind of the chemistry that was there between Bains, Waters, and Klimovich. So you've seen the offense drop a little bit. But to me, like, I do think it's kind of just because he's not playing with as offensive linemen, right? Like, his line mates, I mean, they're not as offensive as kind of what you've seen in the past. But he is still like committed to the process. Like, I do think he's back checking a lot harder. He's a lot more engaged defensively. His forecheck is really something that I think, like, if his forecheck grows to a very high level and continues to grow, like, I do think that when he's on his game, he has a very good forecheck. He's got a long reach, big body, not afraid to be physical. If he can end up doing that and getting really good at that, and then just have his shot as like the hidden kind of weapon that he has in his game, like, he could be an effective guy to play in the NHL in a bottom six if he's just playing like that. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch him grow here a little bit. I got a seagull outside my window and it's staring right at me. Sorry. Distracted a little bit there. But with Klimovich, it was just like eyeing me up. But anyways,
camera three, Alex.
Camera three might have missed it there real quick. He was right on the ledge. It kind of surprised me a little bit. So I'll be interested to see what happens with Klimovich. I do think that, like, the guy's got to get some power play time, right? Like, he's not getting time on the first unit or the second unit. I really think with a shot that dynamic, you got to give him time, right? There it goes right there. You just caught it at the end there. That freaking seagull. But you got to get him some power play time, I think. I get that you want him to, like, earn it, and I really think he has. Like, I think he should be rewarded a little bit for the process of him just playing good defense and actually being committed to the structure. That I would let him go wild a little bit on the power play. Still a little surprised to not see him there. And we'll get the stats up there one more time, because Niels Höglander now up to 17 points over his last 17 games. He's playing some of his best hockey. He's another one who it's like, how are you going to fit this winger into the NHL lineup? Like, it's so strange to think about that. Like, the Canucks need to really make some moves with the wings because, like, in the offseason here, you know, you're going to have Mikheyev coming back next year. You're going to have McDonough in the mix. You're going to have Niels Höglander who wants to get up there, like Linus Karlsson. It's wild to think about how much depth they actually have on the wing that has potential to be like a middle six winger. Like, they have a lot of guys there. They really need to move on because I really think Karlsson's earned a shot. Niels Höglander, I think, has done more than earn a shot. He should be back in the NHL. He'd be playing, you know, on a third line on a lot of NHL teams right now. He just can't do it with the Vancouver Canucks, which is kind of surprising in its own right. And I did want to bring out Steve Baines one more time as well. You can see he's got the 31 points in 55 games this year. Just, man, carving out a hell of a rookie season in the AHL. Let's not forget this kid led the WHL in scoring. That doesn't, you know, that's not just a stat that a 20-year-old automatically gets every year. You got to put in the work. You got to be good offensively. You got to be a hell of a player to lead the WHL in scoring. I mean, he's smart as hell, obviously, and he's figuring out the AHL, I think, pretty handedly. Like, you know, Baines went into the offseason, went into a cocoon, came out a butterfly, way better defensively, has some good two-way play that he kind of always had from the smarts. It wasn't a difficult thing for him to transition to the AHL. Really love the way that he's playing, and I like that he's moving up and down the lineup a little bit. I think he could go all the way up to play with a guy like Niels Höglander and see what he looks like because he hasn't really had the top six opportunity yet, but he's looked hella good as a bottom six player so far this season.
Okay, one guy on the NHL team that I want to talk about, who I was impressed with last night, Chris, Vitaly Kravtsov. I thought he was very good, and every time we talk about him, it feels like the next question is, okay, but if you're trying to make the playoffs next year, where does this guy fit in, right? Because we assume he probably doesn't want to go down to the AHL, right? If history is to serve as any indication, he probably doesn't want to go down to the AHL. So I ask you this because he was featured pretty heavily in last night's Stanchies over at CanucksArmy.com. He was good on the boards. You know, he showed that north-south style. You know, he showed some poise with the puck. Where does Vitaly Kravtsov fit in this lineup?
Well, that's, you know, we just said it. Like, how many wingers? Like, I forgot to even mention him, right? Like, this team has so many wingers, they just have to move on from some. They kind of have to move on from a Garland, a Boeser, or, you know, maybe even like a Podkolzin or a Höglander. Like, they're going to have to move on from one of these players. You simply can't have like 10 NHL caliber wingers on your team and just like roll with that and have such weakness on the defense and at center. Teams can't be built that way. It's starting to really show with this Vancouver Canucks team as well. So I don't know. I like Kravtsov. I've really liked him. No, I wouldn't say that. I've liked him enough up to this point. It's not like he's been excellent. I can see that there's some potential there that I really think would be great. And I think that him playing alongside Vasily Podkolzin is probably where you're going to see some of the best of their play. So yeah, he's another name, but this is like a major thing to address in the offseason is you've got so many damn wingers, man. Like, I don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to move them. You're kind of going to have to move some of these players for a loss almost, right? Or at least a loss of what their hopeful value could have been. It's more of an offseason thing for me. But yeah, with Kravtsov, I've liked him, right? Like, I think he's a big body. You're right with the north-south game that he has. I think that's been pretty good so far this season, but it's not like he's blown the doors off either, right? Like, he hasn't really looked like he should be given top six time yet. He's just kind of fit in and looked like an acceptable bottom six player up to this point. And at that, an acceptable bottom six winger, right? Like, that's a difficult thing for Kravtsov up to this point, is he hasn't shown enough to be for sure getting an opportunity in your top six.
Few people to get to in the live chat here. Dominic said Vit needs his first goal to explode. He's doing so many great things and is a huge factor on his lines. Commander Vander said Krav is consistently getting shots from good scoring areas. It will eventually start to go in. And Canucks need right-handed defenseman said he just needs a better center. Dries isn't it. And Corey Anderson talking about how the win is quite obviously a win. Or the trade, is quite obviously a win with Will Lockwood and a 7th-round pick going the other way to the Rangers.
Here's a question for you. I wanted to bring this up earlier in the show, but like, something just hit me last night where I said, hey, the Canucks shouldn't like ultra focus in on a player type when they're going to acquire some players this offseason. They should really have a bunch of different options and go for the best player available for value, right? Like, whether it be a center that's going to kind of be on your third line, whether it be like a left shot D to play with Philip Hronik or a right shot D to play with Quinn Hughes. Like, find the best value at one of those three positions. Like, don't hyper focus in on needing a guy who's going to be a third line center who's good defensively and can take faceoffs. Like, because it doesn't always work out, especially with a player going to a new organization. Like, I would look for the best value of like one of those three positions of need, whether it be a top four defenseman who's more defensively and plays on the left side, a top four right shot defenseman who you really don't need to be that good to play with Quinn Hughes, or like a third line center who, can be somewhat of a playmaker and be good defensively. Like, don't hyper focus, I don't think, in the offseason. I think just like find the best value there. The Canucks aren't at the point right now to hyper focus. Like, that's what I think's hurt them a little bit in the past. Like, and a lot of that was more Jim Benning making and some horrible player assessment. But I think that's something you might see from this management group, just not necessarily like need one exact type player. Like, if you need a right shot defenseman, you don't need to go onto the market and get Tyler Myers for 6 years, right? You don't need to do that. Like, I think just find value, because it's something we've talked about a lot. Like, value is so key for the NHL right now, especially under this specific salary cap that we're under. Like, I think just finding value is where you need to go with this team, not necessarily focusing in on the perfect player type to help this team right now. They need so much more than that you can't hyper focus right now.
A lot of times that's how you end up making mistakes, right? Like, you need to target the value. You can't really make it obvious. And I know it's hard for the Canucks not to, given their position, but you have to not make it obvious that, hey, you know what? We really need a third line center, or we really need a defenseman on the right side, and we'll pay anything to get him. You just can't build a winning organization like that. Like, you can't build a winning team in the NHL that way. That's just not how it works. So yeah, no disagreement there. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're talking about talent evaluation. Because look, like, how many times do we bring it up? The Tampa Bay Lightning, right? Like, I think I brought them up 2 days ago on the show. That left side that they had in the playoffs when they were winning cups, like, it was much better than their right side, but they realized, okay, maybe we don't need a really good lefty and followed by a really good righty, then a really good lefty followed by another good righty. It's okay, maybe we need 3 really good left-handed defensemen and 1 solid, really solid, obviously, right-handed defenseman, and that can make up our cup-winning defense core. Like, that's the lesson that you take away from that. And they didn't hyper focus on filling out right-handed defense slots. They hyper focused on getting that value, literally what you just said.
And here's the thing, the Vancouver Canucks just hyper focused on a right D by moving a first and second round pick for him, right? Like, you can't double down and double down and double down on those type of moves and think, okay, we're willing to, buy out OEL so that we can spend $5 million on, insert right D here because he's going to be the perfect fit, right? It was like the people back in the day that were like, Ben Hutton and Eric Goodbranson. That's the pairing. It's got the offensive guy. It's got the big defensive guy. It's going to work. It's going to be great. That's our pairing. That's a top 4 pairing moving forward. Like, a lot of the times these things just don't work. I really think that it is going to be interesting. Here's the good thing I think about this whole spot is I do believe the Canucks have done a very good job of evaluating at a pro level, right? Like, they've done a good job of doing this and just typically finding some value. Like, think about the spots where they have actually found value. Obviously, Andrei Kuzmenko, incredible value for that player. But you could look at Dakota Joshua. There's a lot of value coming from that player as well. Luke Schenn in the contract he signed, there was value there with what he brought to the team. There's a lot of little things that have added a lot of value from the most recent kind of scouting that this pro group has done. And I don't think it's going to stop right now, and I don't think it's going to stop in the offseason. So I am a little bit optimistic about the players that they bring in to help this team, but it's not like they need to hyperfixate on certain positions, right? Like, and really just take a trade. Like, I hated hearing that a lot of the time with the Bo Horvat thing, where it's like, yes, but they want a young center to come in and replace. It's like, no, don't do that, man. Just end up like taking the best thing available. Like, because Aatu Räty was in the trade, is that why the Canucks wanted to do the deal with the Islanders? Because we know there was other teams interested. Like, could you get more value somewhere else? Because I really think this team just needs so much surplus value right now that's what they should be targeting in the offseason. Target surplus value. Don't target a player type.
Well, I mean, we kept hearing that. I think you might be talking about the JT Miller trade rumors that was the Canucks need a young center back or they're not going to trade JT Miller. And apparently that was kind of what fell through with the Penguins, or so we're told. So you're right. Like, there's no disagreement coming from me here. But one thing I want to talk about, Chris, because we have a little time here. It's in odds and ends. We got some time. I want to talk about Andrei Kuzmenko a little bit because ties Pavel Bure's record last night for most goals by a Russian-born Canuck in his first season with the club. Look, this guy's production, we were waiting for it to fall off a little bit. We saw the high shooting percentage, and I think that's why we were both pretty critical of handing out an extension. Granted, we also thought the team should rebuild and all that sort of stuff. There was other things in it, but I will say myself, like I'm not going to speak for you, but I think I might have been wrong about that one, about the whole trade Kuzmenko. If you're not going to rebuild, and clearly this team isn't going to, if you're not going to rebuild, you have to you have to keep a guy like that, right? Like if you trust your pro scouting enough and you trust what you're seeing on the ice enough, which the Canucks obviously did with Kuzmenko, you have to give out that extension. And like, look, if he keeps this up over a full 82 game season, and it looks like he's going into next year as well, like his value is going to be even higher. Like we talked about how, he's such a unicorn, like teams are going to be able to add him for such a low cap hit. Look, a guy who's consistently going to score 40 goals in the league, if he reaches that this year, and he's on that pace next year at next year's deadline, if you want to, you get a king's ransom for a guy scoring 40 goals that's on $5.5 million. Of course, the Canucks would be hoping that at that point they're able to make the playoffs off of that kind of production from one of their forwards, let alone at least two or three. But my point here is that his value is absolutely going to be higher next year if he keeps this up, and he's not showing any signs of stopping.
Is it though? Like,
absolutely.
I don't think so. Listen, how many? So out of the top 50 goal scorers in the NHL, Kuzmenko's the only guy who is above 22% shooting. He's at 27%, right? Like that's not sustainable. He's 27.9% shooting percentage.
You've been saying that all year, though. That's the point. You've been saying that all year,
right? And you can have a year where you're in the high 20s, but there's a reason why Jack Hughes has a 13% shooting percentage this year, right? Like there's like Alexander Ovechkin, 14%. Like these players aren't going to live at 28% all season long, because Menko's not going to have an NHL career where he shoots at 28%. And I think he's been excellent. I think he does a lot of really good things right to have that shooting percentage be boosted. Like those tap-ins from behind the net. Listen, that's gonna augment to your shooting percentage a ton throughout the season. But I don't know. I think he's been really good. I think he's really smart, but there's going to be teams that know what he's about in his second year. They're going to kind of really key in on those things. I think there's going to be a learning process around it. I hope that his learning process of the game is even at a higher level, because then, maybe he'll even be more successful. But we've seen this with rookies a lot, and I know that he's not technically a rookie. He's a first-year player. But, man, the 28% shooting percentage, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be something we see over his next 2 years of his contract.
So if a 28 shooting percentage brings him to 40 goals, okay? Let's say he drops down to 22 or he drops down to 19, whatever, and he puts in 30 or whatever. He takes more shots. I'm just saying that if his production keeps up, like his counting stats, his raw totals, if this keeps up, and look, we've been talking about the shooting percentage all season long. I'm done talking about it. I know it's probably going to come down, but it hasn't yet. And I used it as a reason of, they should trade him while his value's high. It's not coming down. It hasn't come down. I don't see anything in his game that's showing me that, that's for sure going to come down. Like, it might come down a bit, sure, but he's also a high-value shooter. Like, he doesn't take shots from very low percentage areas. Look at Connor Garland, for example, not to pick on a player, but last night, how many shots did he just float on net? Yeah, your shooting percentage is going to be better when you score goals. Who would you rather have on your team? The guy who converts on more of his shots? And look, I know I'm making it sound like I don't understand how shooting percentage and analytics and all that works. I do. But I'm also saying when you watch him play, he's not taking many low percentage shots. Like, he's not shooting just from the blue line just to get a shot on net. He doesn't often shoot for rebounds. He doesn't often, he doesn't often shoot for rebounds. He's usually shooting to finish it off and shoot to score. That's what Kuzmenko does. Now, my point, Chris, is just that if this production keeps up, or even if it takes a slight step back, but he's still a consistent 30 goal scorer in the NHL, and he's making $5.5 million next year, absolutely his value is going to be sky high. If he does this over a season and a half, going into next year's trade deadline, and he has another year of team control at $5.5 million, I don't think there's a contender out there that isn't looking at paying a king's ransom to add him at next year's deadline.
Yeah, if he keeps his 28% shooting percentage or scores 30 or even goes down to like 25 or 23%, like I said, hey, if he's down to 22% shooting percentage, like I said, he would be still the highest of the top 50 goal scorers this year if he was sitting at 22%. That's a big drop from what he's doing right now. If he's still at that level, then hell yeah. Like if he's able to maintain a shooting percentage above 20% for his NHL career, hell yeah, he'd be a great player. I just think it's very difficult. It's something that the best players in the league can't do year after year. No matter how good of a scorer they are, no matter how good of a shooter they are, no matter how good of a, Leon Draisaitl type of guy who has so many tap-ins, it's a similar thing there, right? Like he has one of the higher shooting percentages of the top 50 scorers, but he's still going to drop under 20 at certain points. And I think that's something you will see from Kuzmenko over the next 2 years.
I think that he should just shoot more, to be honest with you. Like his shooting percentage probably will drop, but it's also because he doesn't shoot enough. Like I don't think Andrei Kuzmenko shoots enough. He has a really, really good wrister, and I don't think he uses it enough. Like I don't think he shoots enough. I would like to see him start to take more shots personally. And hey, we're talking about a guy who's probably going to finish the year with 40 goals. I think he's a good player. That's all I'm going to say. I think he's a good player. I think he's someone this team probably wants to have around. And if Bleep goes south next year, obviously he's still an option to trade, and I think his value is going to be higher. So if your plan of a retool works and you're able to make the playoffs next year and you're a team poised to make the playoffs and all that good stuff, sure, keep him around. But if like I said, if Bleep goes south, this team can move on from him, and they're going to be able to get more, I think, than they would have at this deadline.
Yeah, it'll be curious to see what happens at not necessarily like the deadline for next season, but the year after that. Like when he's a pending UFA, what's the salary cap? How much are we still strapped for teams making moves with no money? Like if a team would have been, and that's the thing, right? Like I guess a lot of teams were probably looking at Kuzmenko and having 20 goals before the deadline and thinking, yeah, he's playing with Pettersson. He's getting a lot of tap ins. His shooting percentage is very high, right? Like our team's still thinking the same about a player like that when he's making 5.5. That's a lot more money for a team to try and fit into their team, especially when you're going after a winger who primarily is known for power play tap-ins and not necessarily being a play driver, right? Like there's absolutely an argument, I think, to what you're saying. I'm just going to find it very difficult. I would love to see him do well. I love dealing with the player, love seeing him have success. I think it's going to be very difficult, not only to keep this up, but to keep this up also, for 2 full seasons from now, from this point on, have a high shooting percentage, be able to be worth the money that you're going to be on your term. Like it's a big thing to ask here moving forward. And then even if they want to keep Kuzmenko after that year, like, it's a lot of money too. So I think that's the thing about the Kuzmenko extension. The thing that we didn't really consider the whole time was, hey, this is legitimately a retool, right? Like they want to win in that Kuzmenko window of that $5.5 million contract. That's why they signed him to that deal. The Canucks want to win, be a playoff team that's contending in that Kuzmenko window. Like that's the window for winning right now for this Canucks team. The way everything's been kind of laid out here and the players that they've brought in and moved out really points to the next 2 years being competitive. Like as much as we wanted a retool, it's not going to happen, or a rebuild. It's not going to happen. It's a retool, and they're banking on these next 2 years of Kuzmenko being huge. So yeah, he's got to score. He's got to continue to play like he's been playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, do you have anything else in odds and ends, or are we going to Betway?
Yeah. I'll do this quickly. SHL playoffs are underway. Cool story out of Sweden. Vancouver Canucks prospect Lucas Forsell. We know him, friend of the show, and Philip Johansson, friend of a friend of the show. They're matched up against each other in the quarterfinals of the SHL playoffs. If you remember, we've talked about this with Forsell. He grew up with Philip Johansson's little brother. They were best friends. They lived 100 meters away from each other. Good kids, played a lot of road hockey, all that stuff. They've been playing together forever. And they're matched up against each other. How about this, though? So 3 minutes into the game of the SHL game, blow me up here, Alex. 3 minutes into this game, heck of a game, big matchup, and here it is. Our buddy, Lucas Forsell. There he is, 1-0. Fargestide, a couple of slashes on the boards from him. And Quads, why did he score that goal? What was he doing? What is the thing that I love about Lucas Forsell?
Goes to the net.
Absolutely. He scores this goal because he's going straight to the net. Head down, go to the net, dig out a rebound. Good stuff from Lucas Forsell. We love to see it. And he got them on the board early. Last time I checked, it was a 1-1. I haven't seen an update because I was doing a bunch of prep for the show here and all that stuff. So they got their game, and that'll be fun to watch. And then remember, can you get this photo up here, Alex, the Forsell champion? Lucas Forsell was there for Farjasov's playoff run last year. You can see left hand. He had the busted hand, so he wasn't playing, but he was able to be around the team, and they went on to win the SHL playoff championships. Shout out to a family friend of his who sent me this photo. Forsell celebrating. He wants to do this again, but he wants to do it as a contributor instead of just a bystander. Is that the right way to use that? Yeah, as a bystander. He was there. He was in the locker room. He had a good time with the boys, but he wasn't on the ice. So he wants to do this again. He wants to celebrate, wear that gold helmet, have a good time. Couple of Baileys in the morning, like Quads probably there in that photo.
All right, we're over time here. Let's go. Betway, get us out of here.
Yeah, real quick with Betway. I threw it in there late. I'm not even sure if Alex even has it ready. Really putting it on Alex today. All right, we got Columbus and Anaheim. They are facing off tonight. I got Mason McTavish, anytime goal scorer, plus 250 on that. I feel good about that one. I think there's going to be some goals between these two bottom feeder teams. Good thing here is one of these teams is getting 2 points tonight. This is one you want overtime for Team Tank because Team Tank is back in order. We'll get the video to close out. But I got Mason McTavish to score anytime, plus 250. $10 bet's going to return you 35. And our second one, over 6.5 total goals in the game. And Trevor Zegras to pick up 2 points in tonight's game or more, plus 350 for that one. So let's hope for a lot of goals. Let's hope for an overtime game, 3-point game. Lots of stuff like that. Those are our Betway bets of the day. Please bet the responsible way. It must be 19 plus to play. Betway, 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 Betway.
All right. We'll wrap it up there. We got a big weekend ahead. Back-to-back games for the Vancouver Canucks. We'll be back on Monday to break it all down. Harmon's going to be here, hopefully for 2 episodes next week. I was in on a Friday today, so hopefully Harmon's able to do 2 next week. I think that's kind of the plan, so we'll see how it goes. But for now, we're signing off. For my co-host, Chris Faber, our technical producer, Alex Lard, my name is Dave Quadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jim?